yeah, 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 oh, yeah, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh, yeah, oh, na, 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 oh, na, 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 yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 ah, ah, la, 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 oh, ah, ah, la, 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 yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, 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 la, la, la. Oh, 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 la, la, la. Oh, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh, yeah, Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, ah, yeah. Ah, na, na, na. Oh, ah, na, ah, na, na, na. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah. Oh, ah, yeah. Ah, na, na, na. Oh, ah, na, ah, na, na, na. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, ah, la, 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 oh, ah, ah, la, 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 yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, 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 la la. Ah, 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 la la la. Ah, 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 la la la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, 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 oh, ah, yeah, ah, na, 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 oh, ah, na, ah, na, 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 yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 oh, yeah, oh, yeah, ah, ah, la, 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 oh, ah, ah, la, 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 yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh, yeah, oh, yeah, 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 oh, ah, yeah, ah, na, 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 oh, ah, na, ah, na, 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 yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, ah, la, la, la. Oh, ah, ah, la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh, yeah, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, ah, yeah, ah, na, na, na. Oh, ah, na, ah, na, na, na. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, ah, la, la, la. Oh, ah, ah, la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh, yeah, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, ah, yeah, ah, na, na, na. Oh, ah, na, ah, na, na, na. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, ah, la, 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 oh, ah, ah, la, 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 yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, 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 la, la, la. Oh, oh, la la. Ah, 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 la la la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh, yeah, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh, ah, yeah, ah, na, 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 oh, ah, na, ah, na, 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 yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, ah, la, 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 oh, ah, ah, la, 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 yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, ah, yeah. Ah, na, na, na. Oh, ah, na, 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 na. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 ah, ah, la, 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 oh, ah, ah, la, 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 yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh, yeah, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, ah, yeah, ah, na, na, na. Oh, ah, na, ah, na, na, na. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, ah, la, 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 oh, ah, ah, la, 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 yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh, yeah, oh, yeah, 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 oh, ah, yeah, ah, na, 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 oh, ah, na, ah, na, 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 yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, ah, la, 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 oh, ah, ah, la, 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 yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, la. Ah, 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 la, 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 yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh, yeah, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh, ah, yeah, ah, na, 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 oh, ah, na, ah, na, 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 yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 ah, ah, la, 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 oh, ah, ah, la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, ah, yeah. Ah, na, na, na. Oh, ah, na, ah, na, na, na. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, ah, la, la, la. Oh, ah, ah, la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, ah, yeah, ah, na, na, na. Oh, ah, na, ah, na, na, na. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 ah, ah, la, 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 oh, ah, ah, la, 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 yeah, 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 ah, 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 la, 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 ah, 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 la, 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 ah, 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 la, 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 yeah, 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 oh, yeah, oh, yeah, 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 oh, ah, yeah, ah, la, 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 oh, ah, la, ah, la, 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 yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 ah, ah, la, 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 oh, ah, ah, la, 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 yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. ah, 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 la, 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 ah, 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 la, 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 yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, 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 oh, ah, yeah, ah, na, 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 oh, ah, na, ah, na, 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 yeah, 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 ah, 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 la, 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 ah, 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 la, 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 yeah, 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 la la la, oh, ah, ah, la la la, yeah, 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 ah, 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 la la la, ah, 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 la la la, ah, 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 la la la, yeah, 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 Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, ah, yeah. Ah, na, na, na. Oh, ah, na, ah, na, na, na. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 oh, yeah, oh, yeah, ah, ah, la, 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 oh, ah, ah, la, 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 yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, ah, yeah. Ah, na, na, na. Oh, ah, na. ah, la la la, yeah, 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 ah, 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 la la la, ah, 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 la la la, yeah, 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 oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, 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 ah, ah, la la la, oh, ah, ah, la la la, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh, yeah, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, ah, yeah, ah, na, na, na. Oh, ah, na, ah, na, na, na. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, ah, la, 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 oh, ah, ah, la, 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 La la la. Ah, 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 la la la. Ah, 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 la la la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, ah, yeah, ah, la, la, la. Oh, ah, yeah, ah, la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 la la la. Oh, ah, ah, la la la. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, na na na. Oh, yeah. Oh, na na na. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 oh, oh, la, 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 oh, ah, oh, la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh, yeah, oh, yeah, 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 oh, ah, yeah, ah, na, 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 oh, ah, na, ah, na, 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 yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, oh, la, la, la. Oh, ah, oh, la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, 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 la, la, la. Oh, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, 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 yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 oh, yeah, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, ah, yeah, ah, la, la, la. Oh, ah, yeah, ah, la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, ah, yeah. Ah, na, na, na. Oh, ah, na, ah, na, na, na. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, ah, la, la, la. Oh, ah, ah, la, la, la. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, la, la. Ah, 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 la, 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 yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, ah, yeah. Ah, na, na, na. Oh, ah, na, ah, na, na, na. Yeah, 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 yeah,
If you can hear me,
yeah, yeah,
Santa,
yeah, 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 yeah,
just leave a comment if you
yeah,
can hear
yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah. la la. Ah, 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 la la la. Yeah, 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 oh yeah, yeah,
Right. Right.
oh yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, ah, la la la. Oh, ah, ah, la la la. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Right. Good evening, our
yeah,
viewers.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Thank you for joining us. We apologize
yeah,
for the delay.
yeah. Ah, 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 la, la, la.
Right. We got good
Ah,
news
ah,
today.
ah, la, la, la.
We understand most
Ah,
of
ah,
you have learned
ah,
the
la, la, la.
death of
Yeah,
Parents Shuri,
yeah, yeah.
who was the Minister of Agriculture in Mnangagwa's government. So Parents Shuri died yesterday, we understand. And from what we know, Parents Shiri, he was born on the 11th of January 1955, and he died yesterday or the early hours of this morning in Zimbabwe. So most of you remember parents sharing in the 1980s because of Kukurahund massacres that happened in Matabeleland, where at least 35,000 people died or were killed. Right, so parents
It's a very good evening to you right here on. It's a very good evening to you right here on. It's a very good evening. Let's try this one more time. Good evening to you, Zimbabwe, and we are right here on Zim Day. Good evening to you, Zimbabwe, and we are right here on Zim Day. Good evening to you, Zimbabwe, and we are right here on Zim Day. Good evening to you, Zimbabwe, and we are. Let's give it one more try. Yes. Tinokuchingamidzai manerano pano pa Zim Daily. Once again, we want to welcome you tonight. We are looking at the breaking news coming out of Zimbabwe tonight. Just been looking at this is breaking. This has just broken, right? You're getting it here live. We understand, as many of you are aware, there was a Politburo, a ZANU-PF Politburo meeting tonight. And accusations coming from that meeting. We hear there were fireworks tonight at that meeting as Mnangagwa, the current president, calls on CIO boss to claim pro-Chiwenga plot in Politburo. So we just got this news article a few minutes ago, and we're going to be unpacking what's happening. Tinenge takatarisa kuti zvii zviri kuitika manheru anhasi news dzatichangobva mukubata. Saka kune mivese vakateerera, we've just been looking at the life of the decorated or undecorated former or retired Air Marshal Terence Shiri, larger than life figure for some, but pane vamwenyu vari kuti he does not deserve to be recognized at all following the atrocities that he was involved in the 80s. And we're also going to be looking at that tonight. But let's just look at this breaking coming right here on Zim Daily tonight. The president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, confronted internal ZANU-PF opponents on Wednesday with the help of the Central Intelligence Organization boss Isaac Moyo. Zim Live can reveal. So this is an article that's coming out from zimlive.com for those that can actually that want to know more of what happened at the Politburo meeting tonight. You can also log into zimlive.com. They're reporting that the embattled 77-year-old leader used the ZANU-PF Politburo meeting in Harare tonight to accuse some of the ZANU-PF officials of plotting against him by conspiring with opposition while promoting the ambitions of Vice President Constantino Chiwenga to take over. In a stark demonstration of the conflation between the state institutions and ZANU-PF, Mnangagwa summoned Moyo to represent an intelligence report, or to present rather, an intelligence report about a purported plot against him believed to have been commissioned by State Security Minister Owen Mudangube. High-level sources told Zim Live that Moyo turned up with posters allegedly printed ahead of planned anti-government protests on Friday. The posters denounced Mnangagwa while extolling his deputy. Moyo, however, concluded that the plot was being spearheaded by Politburo member Claverias Chizema, who is the Secretary for Health, Childcare and the Elderly, and former Mbare MP businessman Tendai Savano. Moyo accused Chizema and Savano of organizing and funding the planned anti-government protest on Friday. A source briefed on the proceedings said. So this is a news article that is coming to us here live. It's just broken. For those that are joining us, apparently now the state is accusing some of the senior ZANU-PF members of organizing the July 31 protest. In fact, they are saying the likes of Tendai Savanu. Don't know how senior Tendai Savanu is in ZANU-PF, and also a gentleman I've probably heard of for the first time here called Chizema, who apparently is the permanent Secretary for Health and Child Welfare. Moyo, Isaac Moyo, who's the CIO boss, is the one who presented this at the Politburo meeting tonight, according to zimlive.com. They are saying that it was styled like Jonathan Smoyo's Blue Ocean presentation in July 2017, when the target was then Mnangagwa. It was quite theatrical, but of a lesser quality. Placards were printed, allegedly seized from all 10 provinces, indicating support for Chiwenga. Moyo told the Politburo the placards were allegedly going to be paraded on July 31, the source said. The target of Moyo's presentation prepared allegedly at the instigation of Mnangagwa was Chiwenga, the 63-year-old army general who led a 27 military coup that ousted longtime ruler Robert Mugabe. Chiwenga sat silently listening to the presentation. Our source revealed that the plan appeared to send out a message to Chiwenga that we're watching you, but they were either too cowardly to confront him, or their strategy was always to just try and unnerve him. Moyo told the Politburo they had looked into Chiwenga and found him to be a most loyal cadre, supportive of Mnangagwa's leadership, effectively isolating Chizema and Savano. There was no assertive position on Savano taken by the Politburo. Instead, all guns were aimed at Chizema, who was identified as the kingpin of the plot. So this is something that has just come out of Zimbabwe tonight. Their plans, according to a report from zimlive.com, the CIO boss, Isaac Moyo, presented a plot that they are saying the plan was to send to basically elevate the deputy president, Chiwenga. So it appears that there's some within ZANU-PF that are actually behind, according to this report. They're saying that there are some people in ZANU-PF that are also actively involved in the July 31 protests. And at the Politburo tonight, there were fireworks, according to this report we're receiving from zimlive.com. The high-level sources told the publication that Moyo turned up with posters allegedly printed ahead of the planned anti-government protests on Friday. The posters denounced Mnangagwa while extolling his deputy. So this is a news article that we are receiving just here tonight as we were looking at the life of the liberation struggle hero. The plan was for us to look obviously at this so-called decorated general, Parent Shiri, who passed away this morning. But as you know, there was also a planned Politburo meeting tonight. It looks like, from the reports we are receiving, there were also some there were some fireworks that, it looks like things turned out to be very, very volatile tonight, according to this report. ZANU-PF spokesman Patrick Chinamasa told journalists after the meeting that Chizema had been suspended for dereliction of duty. He is charged for failing to report to the ZANU-PF Security Department of the CIO, or the CIO, that anti-Mnangagwa posters had been delivered to her home. So this Chizema apparently is a lady. This is the first time I'm hearing of this Chizema woman, but she seems to have been the sacrificial lamb. Yeah, she has been suspended from ZANU. Apparently there is, she was in cahoots with a gentleman called Tendai Savano. Nothing happened to Tendai Savano tonight, but this Chizema lady seemed to have been suspended from ZANU-PF. This is a history play. This is a replay of the 2016-2017 events. As you know, Politburo meetings then were pregnant with accusations of people plotting to oust Robert Mugabe at the time, and we are seeing this replaying again in 2020. Mnangagwa fears that Friday protest against corruption and poverty could unseat his government, and he has accused organizers of being terrorists planning an insurrection while vowing a strong response by security forces. Police last week arrested Ngaruvume, the main organizer of the protest, and journalist Hope Wechingono, after accusing them of inciting public violence, which the two men deny. As you know, some of us who have been following Hope Wechingono, some say that he had links to some of the senior people in the army, and That's why he kind of continued his onslaught with impunity for some time before he was obviously silenced. But our reports indicate that some senior people in the army, or at least General Chiwenga, kind of supported the work that Hopo Chingono was doing to unveil the corruption, the pandemic corruption that is affects the government today. Mnangagwa has reportedly instructed State Security Minister Ncube to put in place plans to shut down the internet on Friday. The second time this will be done in 2 years after a similar blackout during protests sparked by fuel increases in January last year. So that's a breaking news article coming out of Zimbabwe. There are plans, according to this article, a lady called Chizema has been suspended. Tendai Savano seemed to have, this is the Mbara MP and the businessman Tendai Savano, seem to have escaped tonight, maybe with possibly a censure. And the vice president himself, who attended in person, we're told there were plans to target him, but Chiwenga sat silently listening to the presentation of. Our source reveals that the plan appeared to send out a message to Chiwenga that we are watching you, but they were either too cowardly to confront him, or their strategy was always to just try and unnerve him. So this is the breaking news article coming out of Zimbabwe tonight, and thank you very much for joining us. We just wanted to let you know of the latest that we have received here. So things are quite volatile in Zimbabwe as we speak tonight. Anything can happen between now and Friday. They say in politics 24 hours is a long time. So we don't know. We're just watching, and most of us are hoping for the best. I think as Zimbabweans have suffered for too long that we just hope something will give in. At least we are not advocating for violence, but we have a constitutional right to protest. This is all enshrined in our new constitution. And I remember watching Kazembe, who is the police minister earlier today, who was trying to justify why they'd banned the protest. I think one of his arguments was there's a section within the constitution that kind of gives them the power to, if there is a serious threat to public health, as he put it earlier today, that the government, within the same constitution, it gives them the ability to ban a protest if they feel that it is not in the public interest. So they are hiding behind COVID, as all of you are aware. They know that the same people that masterminded the coup in 2017, sekuziva kwamunoita kuti mbavha haidi kubirwa, and they know all the tactics, so they are making sure that it's airtight, and they're putting all the measures to ensure that the protest on Friday do not go ahead. And we also want to hear from you tonight right here on Zim Daily. We are looking at the latest coming out of Zimbabwe tonight. It's breaking news. President Emerson Mnangagwa confronted internal ZANU-PF opponents earlier tonight, with the help of Central Intelligence Organization CIO boss. This is a breaking news story, Isaac Moyo. This article is taken from zimlive.com. Let's hear from you in case you are also joining us tonight. Toda kunzwa kuti mafungiro enyu nemaonero enyu akaita sei, and tifuna kuzwa la sifuna kuzwa kini ukuthi lani licabangani ngendaba le esizwayo eZimbabwe. Upresident wethu uEmmerson Mnangagwa khanya ngazani bekula ma-fireworks namhlanje tonight. Manero anasi kwanga kuni ma-fireworks according to this report. The Politburo meeting basically led to the suspension of a lady called Chizema, who was being accused with one or two other members in ZANU of planning to overthrow the Mnangagwa-led government. Let's hear, I'm just going to highlight some of the comments that we're receiving here. We are receiving comments here. Let's see, how can you say rest in peace? In fact, most of the comments that we're receiving here tonight are a response to the program that we ran earlier, remembering Zimbabwe's most brutal army general, Air Parents Marshal Shiri. And this guy is, for some, is a larger than life figure, but for some, he is responsible for the massacres in Matabeleland back in 1985, if I remember well, 84, 85, 86, 87. These are the years where these massacres were perpetrated by the late Parents Shiri. One of the masterminds of those, or the perpetrators of these crimes, is the president himself, who will do anything possible to ensure that he remains in power. We want to look at some of your comments here. We have a mixed bag of comments. There are some that are obviously in support of Parents Shiri, and there are some that obviously are not happy with some of the things that he was accused of. So let's read some of the comments here. Let's look at this comment. It says, easy mu comment section umumsatukane poisoned or not, Parents Shiri wazorora chef vedu pa Air Force up. Saka, that's a comment there. We get this comment from Florence. Thank you very much for your comment. And we are also looking at another comment here coming from ZANU-PF and potentially a Parents Shiri supporter, Ramai Mampofu. She says here, you think you got to me, I'm high on morphine. Dear. So there were quite a few exchanges. Corruption chikwerete chirwere kafuti chinoya kunyanya vanotuma. And it's a mixed bag of comments. There is a lady called Ramai who seems to be talking on behalf of ZANU-PF, and also there are some that are responding here tonight, where also telling us what they feel of this so-called decorated general. For those that are joining us, you're looking at the picture. If you're also joining us on Twitter or on Facebook, you can see the picture that we are showing on the screen. This picture is actually this is a picture of Air Chief Marshal Parents Shiri in torn and tattered clothes, carrying his weapons during the days of the liberation struggle for Zimbabwe. As you can see, this gentleman here, Parents Shiri, is he did at least participate in the liberation war, unlike some of these people like Chenjerai Hunzwi, who kind of had he never took part. The late Chenjerai Hunzwi, those who remember how much he received from that compensation scheme for having almost 97% disability, and yet he never fired a single shot, at least was never involved in the liberation war. Yeah, so let's look at some of the comments here. He who lives by the coup goes by the coup. Regai didongorere hangu. So this is a comment in response to the breaking news article we have just received tonight, that there's a plot to actually unseat the current president, and this time it looks like history is repeating itself. The last coup was led by the current president, and now the VP, who is the vice president to the current president, who unseated a constitutionally elected president in 2017, constitutionally elected in courts, is now facing the same. Those that are students of history will know that history always repeats itself. So if ever this succeeds, we are also going to see whoever is going to be number two, Chiwenga, they are also going to probably try to unseat him. So this is always the case when criminals are involved in any plot. Zimbabwe, if you break into a bank and there's two of you, maybe you've walked away with $1 million, and now you're thinking, oh, I could have this million. Instead of sharing the spoils, you're thinking I could actually have the whole of $1 million to myself. So you get rid of the person that helped you to, not that we're advocating for any criminal activity here, but this is just an example of what we think is happening here. You've got two criminals that unseated a constitutionally elected president in courts, and now they're turning on each other. This is exactly what happens if we allow criminals to be involved in this process of liberating us. We're looking at the events coming out of Zimbabwe tonight. There is a breaking news story. Mnangagwa calls on CIO boss to claim pro-Chiwenga plot in Politburo tonight. The Politburo meeting, we understand, was full of fireworks tonight. This is a replay of what also happened a few years back before Robert himself was overthrown, when Professor Moyo also presented a similar dossier to the Politburo that kind of led to the coup, because after that document, we know if a couple of days or weeks after that, we then see the overthrow of Robert Mugabe. So that's what they are saying tonight, that there is some form of history repeating itself. In a stark demonstration of the conflation between state institutions and ZANU-PF, Mnangagwa summoned Moyo to present an intelligence report. The same intelligence report was presented by the then Minister of Higher Education, Professor Moyo, about a purported plot against him, believed to have been commissioned by State Security Minister Owen Ncube. So you've got Owen Ncube, who was the CIO boss, I believe, during Mugabe's time or immediately after the overthrow of Mugabe. And then he was promoted to State Security Minister. And now the CIO boss, Isaac Moyo, is now seems to be on the side of the president, while the State Security Minister Owen Ncube is plotting, according to this report, with Vice President Constantino Chiwenga to unseat the current president. Moyo, however, concluded that the plot was being spearheaded by Politburo member Claveria Chizema. So, as you know, it's always the case that they will always find a lamb to sacrifice here, and this is a lady whom until today, we never knew of this lady, who seems to have been now suspended from ZANU-PF for plotting to unseat Emmerson Mnangagwa. And apparently Chizema was working with former Mbari MP, businessman Tendai Savano. Tendai Savano seemed to have escaped with a censure tonight, but Chizema has been suspended, while Chiwenga sat silently listening to the presentation, and they were just took. The plan appeared to send out a message to Chiwenga that we are watching you, but they were either too cowardly to confront him, or their strategy was always to try and unnerve him. This is history repeating itself. So we want to thank you, Zimbabwe. We'll go through some of the comments that we are seeing here tonight. There is a comment here that says there's a report of a senior official having been fired by Emmerson Mnangagwa. So it is, I think the senior official is this Chizema lady, who is the permanent secretary of health, and her name is Claveria Chizema. She's the one who has been suspended. Tendai Savano seemed to have been let with just a censure, and Chiwenga. So there are three people that are involved in this plot. We know that there is Vice President Chiwenga, who appeared, who actually attended the Politburo meeting in person tonight. There's also former MP, businessman Tendai Savano, and there is a lady called Claveria Chizema, who has been suspended from ZANU-PF tonight. Let's look at the comments. Are these not distractions for the masses who want to demonstrate on the 31st? So that's a comment from William Maziro. We've got another comment here from Emmanuel Nyakonda. It's a diversion. I am not bothered. So I think what everyone seems to be agreeing with here is Zimbabweans have had enough. We have had enough. We have had enough of ZANU-PF. And it's actually quite interesting how now they're turning on each other. But it could be a diversion, so we lose focus on the plan to peacefully protest on Friday. So once again, let me emphasize that the protest, by all means, needs to be peaceful. So there should never be a reason for them to pounce on us. And we know that the protest has been banned according to the police report tonight, but it is our constitutional right. I understand they're launching a High Court appeal tomorrow to try and challenge what the Minister of Police, Kazembe, his report earlier today, arguing that it is in the interest, the same constitution allows them to ban protests as long as it is in the public health interest. So we'll see what happens tomorrow after those that are planning this protest are launching an appeal with the High Court to see whether they can get that ban overturned. What happens in ZANU-PF or MDC should not be the business of Zimbabweans. Out main cry should simply be good governance. And in fact, I don't know what that comment, William Aziro is trying to say there, but I'm sure you have a point, but I just couldn't get it. Let's listen to another comment here. We've heard enough about this regime. We want new blood. I believe that's every level-headed Zimbabwean out there is also, shares the same sentiments. We've heard enough. There is no doubt that these people have outlived their welcome. I think ZANU-PF has outlived its welcome. Let's look at another comment here. This is from Noreen Mutera. She says here, I said it that this July 31 is not for our citizens. Hope you now believe me. I don't know what you mean by it's not for our citizens, Noreen, but thank you for your comment anyhow. So we are listening here to the latest or the breaking news that is coming out of Zimbabwe tonight. There is another coup loading in courts, according to the report that we're getting here from zimlive.com. There were fireworks at the Politburo earlier tonight as Mnangagwa calls on CIO boss to claim pro-Chiwenga plot in Politburo tonight. We will continue following this breaking news story as we get more from our sources. So according to the report, Moyo told the Politburo that they'd looked into Chiwenga and found him to be a most loyal cadre supportive of Mnangagwa's leadership. So effectively isolating Chizema and Savanu. So it looks like they kind of brought this intelligence report, but then concluded that Chiwenga is as clean as anything, but then looked for someone to nail on the cross, so to speak. So we had Chizema, who is a little known permanent secretary for health. Claveria Chizema is the one who has been suspended as we speak tonight. So coming back to your comments, yes, we're right here live on Zim Daily looking at the breaking news coming out of Zimbabwe. So there are questions that we are hearing here that is there another coup loading in Zimbabwe? 24 hours is a very long time when it comes to politics. So anything can happen between now and Friday. But as always, we never advocate for any unconstitutional overthrow of a government. What we are saying here is every Zimbabwean has a right to protest, at least. It's enshrined in our constitution. We are allowed to petition the government in a non-violent way, and we must emphasize that whatever happens on the 31st, let's go out there and show them that we are a bunch of non-violent people. Let's just petition the government, let them know our grievances. We are looking at corruption, abuse of power, many other grievances that have been piling up. We hope to present them out to petition the government on Friday. There should never be any violence. There is no plan to overthrow the government as far as I'm concerned, even though we know they are not constitutionally elected because it is a government that is born out of a coup. But we don't want to give them a reason to clamp down on those that want to peacefully protest, or those that want to exercise their constitutional right to protest. Another comment here says, ZANU-PF must go. I think we all agree after 40, how many years? It's 40 years now since 1980. This year, it's 40 years this year, and ZANU-PF has totally failed. So we have a comment here from Noreen, who says that he who lives by a coup also dies by a coup. We have history repeating itself. Did you hear that someone is donating 40 hives of killer bees to deal with the army if they beat up demonstrators? Yes, so this is another interesting comment here. There are plans to deal with the army. All right, that's quite interesting. I don't know how possible that is. There's another comment here. The pain has been too much and too long. We have no patience at all. A luta continua. I think a lot of Zimbabweans share the same sentiments. We have heard enough about this regime. We want new blood. So that's the latest here from Zimbabwe, and we want to thank you tonight for joining us as we conclude this show tonight. It is within your rights as a Zimbabwean, as long as you are a citizen of Zimbabwe. The Constitution allows you to petition the government through non-violent and very peaceful means. So Friday, it is on. It's on. What the police minister press conference today banning the protest is not worth the paper that it's written on. It's going to be challenged in a court of law, and we hope that the judges who are going to preside over this will interpret the law as the letter of the law, including the spirit of the law. We know very well that there is no country that does not allow people to protest. Even in the current circumstances where we have COVID, there are measures you can put in place to protect the masses. Some of those measures are the ones that we saw with the Black Lives Matter movement as they protested against the killing of George Floyd. So for them to try and argue that it is in the interest of public health, it is neither here nor there, as long as the protesters can exercise social distancing, if you wear a mask, and if you also are non-violent, as everyone has been calling for. There should never really be a reason for the government to clamp down on such a protest. So thank you very much, and a very good evening to you. God bless you as you prepare for Friday the 31st. No violence. Let me emphasize this again. Don't give them a reason to clamp down on a legitimate protest. God bless you and good night.